Welcome to Like a Bomb, a podcast about powerful women from the past and present. Not fragile like a flower.
Fragile like a bomb.
Alright, cool. This is episode 3 of Like a Bomb. Well, clearly it's just been a bad weekend all around and busy week. Um, yeah, work is starting to pick up for me with the big end deadlines, so that also doesn't help with the busyness.
Yeah, I gotta learn all kinds of coding things. I don't, yeah, it'll get done. I think I'm supposed to be building my plant thing on Tuesday. So not tomorrow, but the day after.
Ah, I see. Well,
Yeah.
it's been chaotic. I haven't really slept well. Lots of stress poops for other life things. And then, oh yeah, so we went to the artist outdoor market yesterday because today is Sunday, a recording.
Yes.
And I got a gift for Big Connor's partner when we go visit, when they see us when we go for the wedding next weekend.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm excited. They were messaging me about some of the stuff this weekend. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm going through similar stuff right now. You know, I love you. It's really nice to get to know you. I can't wait to meet you.
And it's so soon. It just doesn't seem like we're already almost halfway through July.
Yeah.
Ah!
I mean, when this episode comes out, it will be over halfway through July, where this is going to be July 22nd, because I think we're still stick to every 2 weeks.
Yes, and 14 plus 8 is 22, if you say so. No
Yes.
calculators in front of me.
You are a math teacher. I hope you can do a little bit.
Yeah, I can move some numbers here and there. Right
It's
now I'm
okay. It's really hard sometimes. What is it? When I did the ADHD testing a couple weeks ago, part of it's an IQ test, and
oh,
it's different math problems if you do in your head, and
mm-mm.
4 and 8, doing 4 times 8 stuck weird in my head.
So I'm seven and nines. I struggle with seven and nines, multiplying sevens and nines, not just together, but two other things. Seven times nine is 63. I know that one.
Yeah,
But sevens and nines, I don't. But apparently, there's like a finger trick where you
the
count.
nines are easy enough with that finger trick. Yeah,
I didn't know the finger trick until like a year ago.
I think Mimi taught me or
Oh,
Granny. Some of them, one of
nobody
them.
showed me the finger trick till, and then I showed my kids, and then we watched Stand and Delivered the last week of school, and it was in there, and they were like trying to do it during the movie. So hey, they were paying
That
attention.
was the movie where they were doing the AP calculus, right?
Yes,
I
yes.
think I know I watched it in school, but I'm trying to think. I think I had to have watched it in high school.
Well, it came out in the 80s.
Well, I know, but I'm trying to think if it was also in middle. It was middle school or high school. Definitely not college.
I don't think it was middle school. They say bad words, and there's things. They say a lot of, not a lot, a few no words, but it is a quality movie. The story is great. So, yep, it did actually reach most of my kids, which was
Yeah,
nice.
I probably watched it in AP calculus junior year of high school.
Very possibly. That
That's
would make
most
more
likely where I
sense.
watched it.
Yeah, probably not in an eighth grade math class.
No, I don't
No.
think I watched it in eighth grade.
Well, my kids
Possible.
were well represented in the movie, so it really hit them, and that was good. They did pay attention to the nines trick and we started doing that while we were watching the movie, which I thought was kind of cool because I walked around and helped them to make sure they knew what they were doing.
That's nice. Oh, on another little tangent, did you listen to one of the albums I suggested?
Oh, no, I haven't had a chance to.
Oh, that's fair.
I just checked on your sister for the first time today, so. But she's made it to DC.
Yay!
She's alive and well.
Yay! Yeah, no, I've actually been listening to the new Knocked Loose album, the You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to album, a bit this weekend.
I
So
listened
that's
to
the
some
metal
Alice in
album.
Chains the other day.
Oh, well, there you go. I was
Yeah.
also thinking, a future episode, because I think, no, you'd like to also do it, but like women in the metal and punk scene, and we can
Oh, I
both do
already
it from like
I have
our perspectives and more of the years we've seen gone to shows.
I have I think I have Joan Jett on my list. I have Riot Girls on my list. I need
Mm-hmm.
to talk to Mason probably at some point and update him on things. I think he's got the next few. You might want to check with your
Mm-hmm.
husband. I don't know. I think I gave him his first four, maybe not. I don't know.
I
And
don't know.
I know it's a long shot, but you already know I want to do Dolly. So I
Yeah, I know
actually
you undo Dolly.
I would love to, and I'm gonna try to know I don't. There's gonna be like rabbit holes, and it's not gonna get where I need it to get. But I'm like gonna reach out and be like, "Hey, we're doing this podcast, and we would love to have your answers to our exciting questions about your life."
It's okay. I
Because
tried to send wedding invites because that's a trend, and I didn't know what address to find because obviously you can't find directly to big artists and actors and
yeah,
things to send to Dolly since we went to Dollywood for my bachelorette trip.
yeah, yeah. Well, I thought I would reach out and see. So if anybody knows Dolly Parton, like I don't know, Miley Cyrus, you're out there, right? She's your
I also
godmother.
thought it'd be funny to do Miley Cyrus the one episode you do Dolly,
That
since
would be.
Dolly's her godmother.
Yep, yep. I yeah. Now I'm going, didn't you send an invite to Ryan Reynolds?
No, because again, you can't
You
find
can't find
actors'
that.
addresses, and I
Didn't
don't
you
want to
send
just
one to
send it to a
Guar?
random PO. No!
Ah.
We have so many extra. Also, the TikTok or Instagram trend of like send to these companies or send these people and you'll get cool stuff back is
You
absolute
don't.
crap.
It doesn't
You
work.
get nothing unless you're already a big like influencer and other
Yeah.
crap.
I don't get free stuff.
No,
No.
PlayStation went congrats and a little card, and I'm like, where's the supposed cool little PlayStation logo glasses that these people are getting or something? Because like I grew up
Um,
on the PlayStation.
I grew up with an Atari, so
Because I
couldn't help you
think
there.
my dad had all of them, the one and two. So I played
Mm-mm.
the original ones and
I don't know
multiple
what
of
he
the
had.
two I know.
I didn't pay attention to what he had.
I know. Um, and then I've had the three and four, and I don't plan on buying the five.
Yeah, nope, nothing.
Uh, well, I think it's your turn to go first for story this week.
It is my turn.
Wow.
And uh I'm doing Josephine Baker, which is I don't think is very well known. I remember, and this is why she sticks out in my head, because I want to say it was HBO that did the Josephine Baker story. It was a movie about her life.
Okay.
And it came out in 91, so I was what, 14? So I probably shouldn't have been watching it. But my dad had cable and he left us kind of unintended for some things.
Oh, I
Um,
mean, there's a lot of movies I shouldn't have watched at age 5 thanks to my father.
yeah, I'm gonna step over that.
Yeah.
Um, so Josephine Baker. So apparently I'm gonna say and so a lot, and I apologize. That is not intentional. She was born in 1906 in St. Louis, St. Louis. I've heard many different pronunciations of this. I'm sure I'm getting it wrong no matter what I'm saying. Missouri.
It's St.
And
Louis.
I've heard people say it's supposed to be pronounced Louis.
Okay, the frat
Ah,
boy ex-boyfriend is from St. Louis and he calls it St. Louis.
oh, well, okay, frat boy, we're going to take your word for it, I guess. So, again, there's a movie, it stuck in my mind. The reason it stuck in my mind mainly was because when there is this vision of her coming out with all of her children, she ended up adopting 12 kids, and we'll get there. But that was
Wow.
like the main thing that stuck in my head because she adopted children from all nationalities and religions because she wanted, her goal was to show, hey, all of these kids, there was 10 boys and 2 girls, and all of them, they're brothers. They treat each other like brothers, they love each other like brothers, and they are of different nationalities and religions. And that was like, she wanted to prove that. But starting from her beginning life, again, she was born in 1906, so a really long time ago. And her mother was Carrie McDonald, and her mother was a laundry worker. And her father, so there's some discrepancy on who her actual father is. So on her birth certificate, it says Eddie Carson. It's also in his obituary that he was her father, but he left the family when she was right after she was born, so he wasn't actually in the life of her anyways, but he was a vaudeville performer. Vaudeville, and if you don't know what vaudeville is, I'm going to give you a short little definition, quick and sweet. It's like a variety act, often comical, with performing animals, comedians, singers, pantomime, and like a bunch more. Think of all those variety shows that they had in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I know that Star Search did not have animals. I think that was a little bit differently, but maybe something like Hee Haws, what I grew up on. Not that
I
the
don't
younger
know. That's a lot.
generation. Google, guys, Google.
Google's our friend.
Google is your best friend. However, later in her life, she said that a man named Eddie Moreno, who was a Spanish dancer, was her father. There's you can deep dive into that. Has been a lot of research into it. Some people have done some of her children have done some deep dives and found a bunch more information. But Eddie Carson is the one who is her father, based on all the research I have. She did have a brother and two sisters. She was raised by her single mother, who wasn't making ends meet. So at 8 years old, Josephine began taking menial jobs to help support the family at 8.
Dang.
Yes. So she has like a 3rd grade education, not any more than that. And at 13, she married her first husband.
Did you just say 13?
I did. 13.
Oh my
so
God.
we're in 1919. And I still think even at the time, 13 was pretty young. That only lasted a year, and it's very possible that she did it to get out of her living situation. She was working at 8 years old to help support the family. Marriage is probably one of the only ways out of that situation. So
Still.
at the same age, after her around the marriage time, she started performing in vaudeville showcases with the Jones Family Trio. And I've already defined vaudeville. It's just a variety act, but it was in person instead of like we're used to TV and seeing things from far, far away that we can watch at any time. Well, you actually had to go to the show, because we're in 1919. Well, as much as she liked and did perform well with the Jones family, she was at a performance for what was called the Dixie Steppers, which is also a vaudeville performing group. And she literally just jumped on the stage and started doing a comical dance. And they said, okay, guess what? You're with us now. And so she joined with them. And so now we're up to her second marriage, and she's only 14 or 15 years old. It is 1920, 1921. She's 14 to 15 years old. She married her second husband, William Baker. They divorced in 1925. However, she kept his name for her professional career for the rest of her life. She does go on to marry 2 more men. We'll get there. But she's only 14 or 15 at this point. She's on her second marriage. She has had a professional career with one vaudeville group, and she's jumped into another one. And at this, she is traveling the country with the Dixie Steppers, and she ends up moving to New York. And she's in a show called Shuffle Along. And in the act and her dancing routine, she decided to add some comedy, and so they actually included it into the entire act. And from there, that show was booked to go to Paris. And we are
Wow.
only at 1922, and she is only 16 years old.
That's
So,
that's insane.
like, this is a movie I watched when I was like 14 years old, and she's always stuck in my mind because she just had this like crazy, exciting life. And with the crazy, exciting life, like, she did good. Um,
Mhm.
so in 1925, she was 19 years old, and she had arrived in Paris, and she fell in love with the city. Just fell in love with it. Um, and at 20, she was given her own show in Paris. So it was a semi-nude costume with bananas. So like she kind of had like, we called them bloomers when I was cheering. And so it was basically like bloomers, like little undies. And she had like a ring of bananas around her waist. And then she had like a bikini top with bananas around that too. And
That's funny.
so she did kind of like a risque comedy routine is the better way to probably describe it. She was a huge hit in Paris, like huge. Ernest Hemingway actually described her as the most sensational woman anybody will ever know. She ended up opening her own cabaret nightclub called Chez Josephine. So she's in Paris, and I'm trying. I think it's
It's
Chez
okay.
Josephine. Um,
I I got criticized for my speaking of French when I was in Paris, and
yeah,
it really wasn't that bad.
yeah, I know mine's not. So she operated the nightclub until 1928. And it was very significant because it was the early jazz in Paris. Like it was like the gateway for jazz to come into Paris, and it was the first real Black community in Paris.
Oh,
Um,
that's really cool.
and she's only 20 years old at this point. And throughout her life, because of all these great things she did and how she was just in the public and going out and having fun, um, she received, depending on what article I read, between 1,000 and 1,500 marriage proposals in her life.
Oh my god.
I was like, I don't even want to know that many people.
Yeah,
Ugh,
that's just
ever,
too much.
no, recurring nightmares that people just, everybody I know shows up at my front door when I wake up. Ugh. Okay. So, 1927, at age 21, she made her first movie debut, and she was the first Black woman to star in a movie. And it was a French silent film. And in the English translation, it was The Siren of the Tropics. So, she is 21 years old. She has opened her own cabaret and nightclub. She has had her own show in Paris. She's the first Black woman in a movie. By 24, she had sang for the first time professionally, and then that became part of her act. In 1936, at 30, she returned to the U.S. to perform in, and I'm going to destroy this, Ziegfeld Follies on Broadway. The New York
Oh, that's
critics,
cool.
yeah, New York critics responded with hostility and racism, and she swore to never return to the U.S. again. So
I
later in
mean,
life,
the US is still very racist. I mean, most of the world is still pretty racist, but she found her little niche there in Paris.
well, in Paris was nothing in comparison to the U.S. and as far as racism went, there was a lot more. It was a better place for Blacks at the time in
Mhm.
Paris at the time. Um, she at one point she actually refused to come to the U.S. Had all these invitations and refused, and she said, "I will not come if I'm performing for a segregated audience." And so like in Florida, they said okay, and they like it was the first integrated show on the beach. So
Florida of all places.
yeah, so that I thought
Okay.
that was pretty cool. Um, where am I at now? Oh, okay. In 1937, she was 31 years old, and she has just returned and really bummed and upset with the US because they were just mean and horrible to her. And she becomes a French citizen. and she marries her third husband, a Frenchman, and they are married for 3 years, and they divorce in 1940.
At least she's at a decent age to get married this time.
Yes.
In her
So
20s, 30s.
in 1939, France declared war on Nazi Germany. So she sang and danced to help raise money for the French army of a country that she loved and accepted her. So she wanted to give back as much as she could. By 1940, Paris had fallen to Germany, and she moved to her south of France chateau and sheltered refugees. So she's trying to give back. So during the war, she worked with the Red Cross, the Free French Forces, and the Resistance. She entertained French and American troops in France, Africa, and the Middle East. She was an entertainer. So because she was an entertainer and not deemed a threat, she was able to travel and socialize with troops and bureaucrats from America, France, Germany, Italy, all over the place, Japan. And they didn't like suspect that she was doing anything other than she was a woman and she was an entertainer. So, of course, at the time, there wasn't a lot of thought of what women could do. So they didn't think anything of her. So she was actually able to collect enemy secrets and smuggle them out in lyrics in her songs. So she
Nice.
actually did some espionage. And she ended up having to flee France when German troops searched her chateau for resistance fighters. She got really lucky and somehow talked them out of like searching everything, and they didn't find anything. But she first went to Portugal, and then she went to North Africa. So all the information that she collected through all of her just being able to like, gossip and talk and like overhear things when she's, walking around clubs, was
Mm-hmm.
able to help the Allied forces invade North Africa in 1942.
Look at her, a
So,
powerful woman.
yep. By age 38, the 1944, she was able to return to Paris. She sold jewelry and valuables to help feed the poor. So in 1945, she was awarded 3 different major awards for her war efforts. And I am going to destroy these French words. Croix de Guerrière. First American woman to actually receive this award. Rosette de la Resistance. And I'm going to say the National Honor of the Legion of Honor. So it was the highest award to military or civil people in their war efforts. And, well, so she actually, and I'll get to that. Sorry, skipping ahead. Nope, no skipping ahead. In 1947, she married her 4th husband, and who was a French composer and conductor, and they didn't divorce until 1961, so they were married for over 10 years. And in 1950, she moved to her estate in the southwestern France and began adopting what she called her rainbow tribe, the babies of all the nationalities and religions, to prove that they can still be brothers and sisters.
That's a cute name.
Yeah. So she called them a rainbow tribe. And I remember watching the movie and going, okay, that's okay. Even if I can't have kids, I can adopt, and I can adopt whoever just needs a home. And I could have my own rainbow tribe. And I didn't even think,
Yep.
just like whoever needs a home.
You
So
actually got 2 of us.
Yeah, but it stuck with me that somebody thought to just say, I'm going to take in people who need homes and not stress, does their skin match my skin? Does their religious belief match my religious belief?
Yeah.
So at that point, she is still working a little bit, singing, dancing, doing all her fun, exciting things. And by 1956, at age 50, she did retire from the stage and only did return to when she, needed some extra money for the estate or on special occasions like anniversaries of when she first opened her first show and those kind of things. She spent the rest of her life focusing on her children and her estate. She is the only woman to have spoken at the March on Washington with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She is the only woman to have spoken. And they actually didn't want her to speak because of her reputation of kind of just saying and doing whatever she wants. But she had a friendly relationship with Dr. King, and they said, nope, you're coming. And this is just a little part of what she said. She said, you know, friends, that I do not lie when I tell you I have walked into palaces of kings and queens and into the houses of presidents. But I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee, and that made me mad. And when I get mad, you know that I open my big mouth. And then look out, because when Josephine opens her mouth, they hear it all around the world. So she actually ended up being, there's a Josephine Baker Day, which is May 20th. And this is declared by the NAACP for her contributions to expanding democracy in the U.S. So by the time she is 68, it's 1975. She's still living in Paris, and in her sleep, she slipped into a coma and passed away at only 68. But
Wow.
think about all she did by the time she was 20. Like,
Yeah, and then all the rest that she did after is still
yeah.
an insane amount.
So, of course, I have to have some fun facts. So, she owned her own plane, which, wow, think about when she was alive. That was impressive.
Mm-hmm.
She was the first woman buried with full military honors in France.
Oh boy, that's a lot of women have started not until the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
That she was, oh, I mean, good
Yeah.
for her, but
She had a
France.
21 gun salute. She had a ton of pets: dogs, cats, fish, parrots, parakeets, snakes, chimpanzees. She had a cheetah named Chiquita who wore a diamond collar. She had a pig named Albert, and she had a goat. And the last thing, and I've read it in 3 or 4 articles, and even one with an interview with one of her sons, that she wasn't just open to all nationalities, races, religions. She was open to all genders and sexual preferences. And as one of the articles said, she played for both teams. And for a time when she was alive, that was not
That
a
was
thing.
still very frowned upon.
Yes, and
I mean, being bi is still frowned upon. A lot of people don't understand bi, but they can understand gay or lesbian.
yeah, but I mean, for her son to have said it in an article and research, then that means that her children even knew. And they weren't
Mm-hmm.
that old, because she didn't start adopting them until 1950, and she passed away in 1975. So that's only 25 years. So if they were babies, they were only like in their 20s
Yeah.
when she passed away. So I don't know. Her story has always stuck with me, of just all the crazy but good things she also did. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I tried finding the movie where, like, you know how it gives you that how to watch, and it didn't give me that option. So
Oh.
I couldn't figure out how to get it. But that's
Yeah, sometimes they're
Josephine
also
Baker.
on. Yeah, that's exciting. And then the movies sometimes are on weird spots, but now at least, maybe someone can send us an email and be like, I found it on
Yeah.
this site and so and so.
Yeah, I did. Me and technology aren't always best friends, but it usually gives you that where to watch, and it wasn't giving me that option the few times I've looked for it, because I swear it was
Mm-hmm.
HBO that I watched it on all those many years ago.
Well, it's called Max now.
Forget
I
those
don't know. I
things.
don't pay attention to the naming of it because I don't have the account at the moment.
Don't we
Uh,
have it through
but
something though?
I thought it was a temporary thing. Whatever.
I don't
I
know.
don't watch enough things on that HBO related. I did watch the Last of Us season 1. That was really good. Changes from the game were amazing. Like it was well done.
I'll take your word for that.
I mean, you'd like the show. You don't have to know the video game.
I watched a movie the other day called Space Cadet.
Okay,
It was cute.
I'm sure.
It
Can't think of any movie I know of Space Cadet.
it was about a girl who had had a gifted mind, and she did all these amazing things like in school. From like she made this manatee gate so that they wouldn't get trapped or run over by boats, and then she got into Georgia Tech and full ride and everything was going to go because her goal was like to be an astronaut, and
Yeah,
her mom got sick and passed away, and she stayed, didn't go to college to help with her dad that was like emotionally falling apart. And so 10 years later she still hadn't done anything. She was working at a bar, which there's nothing wrong with working at a bar, but she really wanted to go, and they were taking like applications, and so she applied with like the truth. And then she sent the information, right before she sent it out, she sent it to her friend to say, this, what do you think? And her friend like added stuff, and she got in, and it's really cute, and it's got Emma Roberts. It was a cute movie. I liked
well,
it.
that's good.
You might like it.
Maybe. Well, maybe I'll take a look. I haven't watched a lot of movies. I've been so distracted and only wanting to play Minecraft lately in my free time.
Well, sometimes we need those escapes.
It's nice. It's been nice.
Okay, what you got?
Well, I have similar with your theme of like a person and then a kind of broader thing as well. So my person is Mary Beatrice Davidson Kenner. And she is credited for the sanitary pad belt.
Oh,
So I'm going to talk about her and her patent for that, and then of course some of the history with the sanitary pad, the menstrual pad. So Mary Beatrice Davidson Kenner was born 1912, died in 2006.
oh,
Always had trouble sleeping when she was growing up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her mother would leave for work in the morning through the squeaky door at the back of their house, and the noise would wake Kenner up. So one day she said, "Mom, don't you think someone could invent a self-oiling door hinge?" She was only 6 at the time, but she set out about the task with all the seriousness of a born inventor. She said, "I hurt my hands trying to make something that, in my mind, would be good for the door. After that, I dropped it and never forgot it. Oh, but never forgot it." And you could say that skill and ingenuity was in her blood. Her maternal grandfather had invented a tricolor light signal to guide trains, and her sister, Mildred Davidson Austin Smith,
wow.
grew up to patent her own family board game and sell it commercially. Her preacher father, Sidney Nathaniel Davidson, even made a go of transforming the family hobby into a full-time career. Around 1914, Sidney patented a clothes presser that would fit in a suitcase and press trousers while a traveler was en route to his destination, but he turned down a New York company's $20,000 offer in favor of attempting to manufacture and sell it himself. The result, sadly, was a failure. He produced only a single presser, which he sold for the paltry sum of $14.
Uh-oh.
Her
Wow.
father's experience didn't put Kenner off inventing, though, and her idea for the door hinge ignited a spark deep inside her. New ideas for inventions would wake her up from her sleep. She occupied herself drawing up models and building them, while other children her age were drawing fanciful aeroplanes and sports cars. Kenner was making thoughtful plans for a convertible roof that would go over the folding rumble seat of a car, where backseat passengers were usually exposed to the elements.
Huh.
When she saw water dripping off a closed umbrella and onto the door, she came up with a sponge tip that would go in the end and soak up the rainwater. She even drew up plans for a portable ashtray that would attach itself to a cigarette packet. This pragmatic, do-it-yourself approach defined her inventions for the rest of her life. But while her creations were often geared towards sensible solutions for everyday problems, she could tell from an early age that brain processing with words. Kenner could
Yes.
tell from an early age that she had a skill that not many possessed. And when her family moved to DC in 1924, she would stalk the halls of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, trying to work out if someone had beaten her to it and led a patent for an invention first. The 12-year-old didn't find any that had done so. In 1931, she graduated from high school and earned a place at the prestigious Howard University, but was forced to drop out a year and a half into her course due to financial pressures. She took on odd jobs such as babysitting before landing a position as a federal employee, but she continued tinkering in her spare time. The perennial problem was money. Filling a patent was, and is, still very expensive. Today, a basic utility patent can cost several $100s.
Yuck.
By 1957, Kinner had saved enough money to buy her first ever patent, a belt for sanitary napkins. It was long before the advent of disposable pads, and women were still using cloth pads and rags during their period. Kinner proposed an adjustable belt with an inbuilt, moisture-proof napkin pocket, making it less likely that menstrual blood could leak and stain clothes.
Smart.
Yeah, very useful.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says, one day I was contacted by a company that expressed an interest in marketing my idea. I was so jubilant. I saw houses, cars, and everything about to come my way. And then a company rep drove to her house in Washington to meet with their prospective client. But once they got there, they found out she was black, and their interest dropped. Their representative went back to New York and informed her the company was no longer interested. Despite this, she continued inventing for all of her adult life. She eventually filed 5 patents in total, more than any other black woman in history.
Wow.
Again, she continued to draw inspiration from her daily life, where her sister Mildred developed multiple MS and had to get
Sclerosis.
around with a walking frame. Kinner patented a serving tray and a soft pocket that could be attached to the frame, allowing Mildred to carry things around with her. She also patented a toilet tissue holder that made sure that the loose end of the roll was always within reach, and a backwasher that could be attached to the wall of a shower to help people clean hard-to-reach parts of their back. And Kinner did not receive any college degree or professional training, and she never became rich from her inventions. But that was incidental. Like her father and grandfather before her, she did it out of love for the craft. Most of all, she believed that anyone could become an inventor as long as they put their mind to it. Every person is born with a creative mind, she said. Everyone has that ability. And so, similar to discussing Marsha P. Johnson last week, Mary Beatrice Davidson Kinner does not have much written on her. All the articles have essentially the same thing said about her with slight different embellishments. And that is her story. She has still the longest running with most patents for a black woman, still the 5, and most notably that sanitary belt patent. Which brings me to, like you, with you also talking the history of like the birth control pill and then birth control coming forward, is the history of the sanitary pad, menstrual pad. And it is currently the most widely used method of period management. It's easy to use, easily accessible, and pretty straightforward. The pads we use today are mostly synthetic bleached material, but what about 50 years ago or longer? So menstrual pads have been mentioned in history as early as the 10th century in ancient Greece, where a woman is said to have thrown one of her used menstrual rags at an admirer in an attempt to get rid of him.
I mean,
pretty interesting way to tell them to go off.
You do what you gotta do. Ooh.
Now, before the disposable pad was invented, most women used rags, cotton, or sheep's wool in their underwear to stem the flow of blood. Knitted pads, rabbit fur, even grass were all used by women to handle their periods. The very first disposable pads were thought up by nurses, looking for new methods to stop excessive bleeding, particularly in the battlefield. The first pads were made from wood pulp bandages by nurses in France. It was very absorbent and cheap enough to throw away afterwards.
Oh.
Commercial manufacturers borrowed this idea, and the first disposable pads were available for purchase in as early as 1888, called the South Ball pad. Yep.
Guess you had to have a lot of money, though.
Probably. I had to have to look up the price. Look up South Ball pad, I guess, 1888. Now, in America, Johnson & Johnson developed their own version in 1896 called the Lister's towel, sanitary towels for ladies. Problem was, most women did not feel comfortable asking for this product. So in the early 1920s, the name was changed to Nupac, a name that did not describe the product. And even though sanitary pads were available during this time, they were much too expensive for most women, and they continued using more traditional methods. And it was much easier to be afforded. They were allowed to place money in a box so they could not have to speak to the clerk and take a box of Kotex pads from the counter themselves. It took several years for disposable menstrual pads to become commonplace. The earliest disposable pads were generally in the form of cotton wool or similar fibrous, rectangular, covered with an absorbent liner. The liner ends were extended from front to back so as to fit through loops of a special girdle or belt worn underneath undergarments. Thus, she has 4 names: Mary Beatrice Davidson Kenner's sanitary belt patent. So that way, less mess and everything.
Yep.
And it was later on that an adhesive strip was placed on the bottom of the pad for attachment to the saddle of the panties. This became a favored method for with women, and the belted sanitary napkin quickly disappeared during the early 1980s. Now, I don't know when this article was written, but it says over the last 20 years, the sanitary pad industry has advanced by leaps and bounds. Gone are the days of the bulky belts and diaper-like thickness, with the invention of more absorbent materials and better designs. Pads are more comfortable and practical than ever. The invention of wings keeps pads in place of the underwear, and the
Wings are
invention of scented
beautiful.
pads reduces odor. I think scented pads are stupid and not healthy or safe
No,
for
I
down there.
don't think any of that's good, but I will say wings are relatively new. Well,
It does say they are new. This particle was at least as old as 2016 as the comment I saw on it. Um, there's also the fact of it was only recent that blood was actually used for testing sanitary pads.
yeah,
Yes.
I did know
Researchers
that.
from Oregon Health and Science University were the first to test menstrual products with human blood in a study published in August 2023.
Ooh, yeah, I feel like I read that somewhere, and I can't find the cost of the first one. I'm like lots of googling, and it ended up at some point I got taken to brake pads, and I'm like, that's so not what I was
different
looking,
pads.
not what I was looking for.
You
But
can't stop menstrual blood with that.
I mean, no, I
But
don't.
there's also, of course, all sorts of different other period products, such as like the menstrual cup. I may cover that with the person who started that and that history another time. But pads, it wasn't until last year, not even a full year ago, that it was published that they actually started using blood. They had only used water beforehand. Wings are a recent invention. It wasn't until the 80s that adhesive was used to keep in your underwear.
Yeah, because the
I
ones
can't
they give you,
imagine.
yeah, because the ones they give you, I mean, I haven't had a kid in a really, really long time, but I know the ones that they gave me when I was in the hospital after I had both of you, there wasn't adhesive. Like you just put it there and hoped it stayed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the hospital. I don't know why I haven't had to do any of that for 20 some years. But I know that was like, huh? What? This seems wrong. And I want to say that I have since I've been teaching, I know there's always one in our red bags, our emergency bags. And I just generally have a stash for the kids of my stuff I've bought. And
Yeah.
I know that sometime over the years, they didn't always have adhesive because they were probably like the generic ones you get from the hospital because they were in there.
Or if there is any period products, it's tampons,
Mm.
which I still hate as an adult. Many women I know don't like them, and they're usually the cheap cardboard ones that don't have like an actual insert tube, so like it's even worse.
Yeah, I will say it's a whole aisle at the store now, though.
Yes, wow, we have a whole aisle, but there's also still the pink tax. Pads are still unnecessarily expensive.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's why I stock up on clearance. I'm probably good till menopause.
I unfortunately don't have that benefit. I would have to have a lot of pads in my
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, I'm probably good till menopause. And if they hadn't fixed my thyroid, I'd probably already be full on to menopause because I'd already been in it. But
Yeah,
yeah, they're ridiculously priced and
they
silly.
are. And it's something that we have to have. Um,
Yep.
and we can't control it. I mean, in some women, they bleed longer than normal. Like, I am literally on my ninth day of my period right now.
Yep, because you're my child.
Yeah, well, we're looking at me having PCOS.
Well, you're my kid.
Yes.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
You're so unsure of yourself.
Well, I don't know why we have to be apples and trees. And that makes me a tree and you an apple. And why does it have to be an apple? Why can't it be a pear? Is that on a
I can
tree?
be any fruit. The whole idea is, I guess, tree, and things don't roll far from it unless,
I
I guess, you're
mean,
at the
could
top
it
of the
be a
hill.
fig? Could it just be a pecan or pecans on trees?
Yes, there's pecan trees.
I mean, I don't know. I can't eat these things.
What? Oh, I literally have trail mix with mostly pecans,
Oh,
walnuts, almonds, and
I'm
blueberries.
allergic to all the nuts.
What?
Yep, that's recent. Well,
Okay, I was about to
this
say, like, oh,
this in the last year, I know that one. So that means like all those fun new flavored foam cream things they have at all the coffee places, I can't
oh,
have
yes.
because I'm allergic to every type of creamer.
I don't drink coffee.
Oh, I do. I mean, I don't usually add cream, but I can't even have any of it because even Starbucks have it has a new non-dairy, and they were so excited to share that with me. And I said, "But I bet it has soy." And she's like, "No, no, no." And then she read the box, and she's like, "Yep, I'm sorry." It's like
Yeah,
it's okay. I'll take my
that's
iced
fun.
coffee with just caramel. Thank you.
I'm just stick with my tea. Had a nice cup of tea this morning.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Well, just as a reminder before we round out this episode, which I'm assuming we will do soon,
Yes.
we have our email, like a bomb podcast at gmail.com. So our name, podcast at gmail.com. So if you want to send us any suggestions on people that would to cover, not even just big historic people, but someone in your life, like aunt, mom, grandmother, crazy, wild stories.
There's always stories. All the women are
Yes,
crazy.
there is.
I mean that
And
with
then,
love.
huh?
No, I said I mean that with love.
And then, of course, eventually we'll start doing more of the social medias. There'll be posters going around soon that us and friends and family will be putting up. So for any local places, coffee shops or whatever, might have some of those. Typical every 2 weeks we post on Spotify and YouTube. So if you decide one week you want to do the other one, you have options.
And we are excited to tell all of these amazing stories of amazing women from past, present, and even future because time is circular. We know the future. No, not really. But with that being said, go do something extraordinary.